Hello and welcome to the new Ashla podcast. Today we're honored to be joined by the visionary souls behind Soluna Mind and Body, a space where movement, energy, and deep embodiment come together to awaken the heart and spirit. Our focus today is Kundalini Yoga, where movement, energy, and deep embodiment come together to awaken the heart and spirit. This conversation couldn't be more aligned in both our traditions and our values. We speak of awakening, not just intellectually, but physically, spiritually, and emotionally, but also energetically. We speak of the serpent fire and the force within, the inner current that, when awakened, transforms how we see, how we live, and how we serve. Today we're joined by Marissa and Shannon of Soluna Mind and Body. How are you guys doing? Thanks for coming on today.
Good. We're doing very good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate it.
We're so happy to be here. This was such an honor. Thank you for thinking of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the work you guys do is so incredible. I mean, I've gone to a lot of your guys' different events. I've seen a lot of the stuff you guys put out there. And it's just incredible, the community you're building and the offerings you guys have to help people get in touch with who they are and in their power. Yeah. I know one thing for me that I always struggled was finding good somatic practices. And I love how almost every event I've gone to, you have somatics woven in there somewhere. And it's always one of my favorite parts because of that release, that discharge of energy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so beautiful to get to move in a way that's not really related to thinking so much as just feeling. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're pulled to this practice, but also just it's woven in through everything that we do at Soluna.
Yeah.
You were just at an event, you guys together, right? Like last week?
Yeah, it was their new moon ceremony. And yeah, they did. It was a song bath through Gong Journey, which was amazing. The somatic dance and the cacao passing. And Shannon had this beautiful idea for, since it's the new moon in Taurus, to symbolize abundance. So we had this community jar where we wrote out all these different affirmations and things we just wanted to give to the community and put it in this jar. And we each had our own little jars that we then borrowed from the affirmation jar to put in there. So whenever we're going through hard time or need an affirmation, we just pull it out, and someone from the community had written down something. And I've already used it twice, but I found the perfect spot for it.
I love that. I love the idea of just having sort of a community bank that we could all withdraw from when things got a little different.
Yeah. No, it's such a beautiful idea. What made you think of that? Or was it just sort of playing around with the idea of...
You know, it was kind of like a mixture of all of us when we were talking about how we saw the new moon, because so often we look at new moon and the average person is like, oh, the new moon's great for, you know, calling in things that we want, and the full moon's for releasing, and the new moon's for bringing in. And we were like, well, you know, Taurus is kind of our wealth and our abundance. And then we started thinking about, but what is wealth? And that sparked an even deeper conversation that was, when we have more, we want to give more. And then it was like, well, what if we had some type of deposit withdraw system that was, you know, for the community, but it was, you know, emotional wealth. It was something that we could pull on that would, you know, get us through some of those times where we felt a little less than.
God, it's such a great idea, though. Have you guys ever considered franchising? Like, just saying.
Very clever. Yeah.
Thank you.
So how long has Soluna been around for?
Actually, we are, so officially Soluna's 2-year is on May 5th. We started our business on 5/5/23, so 5/5/5. But beyond that, Marissa and I have been together since 2012. She always has to remind me because I always get a little sticky on the date. But we've been friends for a very long time. And we kind of started this, our very first best friend date was at a yoga studio.
Yeah.
So
that was fun.
we met through our husband. We both were like instantly like, hey, this girl is cool. She's really cool, you know, like I want her to be my friend. And then I don't remember if it was you or me, but one of us was like, hey, do you want to go do a yoga class? And it wasn't that the class was necessarily bad, but I remember that we bonded afterward on the fact that at the time, you know, I don't think either one of us really felt welcomed. We were both pretty to yoga. She had more experience than I did, but it was more like I didn't feel like my body size was the right shape, that my look, I didn't have the right clothes, like it just didn't fit. And regardless of whether that was, you know, our race or our body shape, it was just, we walked away feeling
like we weren't welcome.
Like we weren't welcome there, and almost a little bit less than the other people that were there. And I think that sort of sparked our own personal practice together, because after that we started, I think it started with crystals, and that was kind of like our gate crystals, and just, you know, collecting crystals. And then it was oracle cards, and then it was, oh, let's learn more about the moon and the cycles. And then it was, let's have our you know, our own personal full moon. Every full moon we're going to get together without fail, you and I and our friends. And that just started to grow into this I mean, we had at one point, I think in this tiny little house, I remember very, very clearly, we had moved all of the furniture into the kitchen. We had 10 mats, and it was 2018 that I started to become interested in sound healing. And so it was 2018 that I started working with different vibrations and sound, and that became part of it. And Marissa has always been a dancer, belly dance and hula, and she brought that element of sort of somatic movement, even though at the time we didn't really understand that it was somatic movement. And it just became like a ceremony that was like, okay, we were going to have dance, we're going to have an activity, we're going to have a sound bath to integrate everything.
Yeah.
And then from there, it grew and grew and grew. And then we decided that it was time to further our knowledge base. We'd both at this point been Vinyasa 200-hour certified yoga instructors, but Vinyasa itself still wasn't clicking with us. It still wasn't something that we felt connected to. It was a beautiful practice, but it wasn't.
Can you explain the difference for folks who don't know what that style of yoga is?
Yeah, Vinyasa is a very, sometimes can be intense style of yoga. And typically this would be the yoga that you would see in the West, that is your fitness yoga.
Like at the studios and stuff, or, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and we signed up for a training for what was being said as a Kundalini sound healing teacher training. And at the time, we were like, oh, Kundalini. And we started to learn a little bit more about it. And we weren't really sure what we were getting into. And we ended up going to El Sidral Cozumel, which is a very, very small, very, very small village, the first city on the island of Cozumel.
Oh, wow.
And I still remember the trip to this day, because I hadn't traveled a whole lot at this point. And so it was like, we get to the island, there was no tarmac. You had to walk down the steps. And then I'm like, oh, I don't know where we're going. And then they take us to the middle of this little teeny tiny island. And we knew as soon as we pulled up, because her facility was painted with chakras all the way around.
Okay, yeah.
And so we're like, okay, okay, we're safe. We're good. This is good.
You know that you're someplace cool when you have to walk down the steps, you know.
Yes. And I remember that trip really feeling like it was testing our friendship in ways that we didn't know, but that we were coming out much stronger. And we were there for almost a month. And it was, our diets changed, the way that we did our daily routine changed, how we worked, how we helped to cook and to clean and to take care of the property, all while doing 2 to 3 practices of the yoga per day.
Wow. That's like some Mr. Miyagi style right there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And when we really get into it, I mean, there were moments where there was, a tarantula in the bedroom.
There was a gecko.
There was a gecko in her bed.
Geckos are okay. Tarantulas,
the bed that I was sleeping on.
She's like,
oh my God.
I'm like, fling it. How do you want me to fling it? She's like, just figure it out.
Oh my God, that's great.
Use the forward loop.
All night, just figure it out.
But at the end, it was so transformative, because it really was a representation of stepping so far outside of your comfort zone, leaving your family behind, leaving the comforts behind, changing your diet, and really stepping into this, what we didn't know at the time was going to be one of the most transformative things of our life. And that's when we became hooked on Kundalini. Not necessarily would I even say like the practice itself, but I would say the feelings, the sensations, the ability to step outside of the world itself and into your body.
Oh, that's incredible.
Did you want to add anything to that? I feel like I hijacked that whole thing.
No, you said it purposely.
Well, that was quite a journey you took us on. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's always in the hardest times do we cultivate the strongest character.
Yeah.
And man, that just sounds like such an experience right there. I know it's like
Yeah.
I've thought about backpacking for like a month or two just to sort of get that ruggedness, that roughness, just to experience a level of hardship that I know would help create better character, have that silence for X amount of time. Like,
Yep. Oh, that was another experience. There was a moment where we were in silence for a very, very long time. No speaking to each other, no speaking to our master.
Mm.
That was a beautiful practice, especially for me, because as you can see, like I don't have shortage of words. That was really interesting. But yeah, there and it was so beautiful because not only were we exposed to the practice itself, but the culture of the island as well.
Mm.
You know, the Mayan roots, as well as our teacher was beautiful in showing us, you know, the cacao practice and the temezcal practice. And so there were lots of different things that we experienced on that trip that I just would not have ever changed for the world.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, what is cacao?
So cacao is, well, actually, you might be better to explain this because I know our cacao is really special.
Okay.
your cacao
So-
is special.
Cacao is a fruit that grows on a tree. It's what chocolate is made of, and like
Okay.
dark chocolate. But the pure cacao, it's a very bitter, not seed, but like inside the fruit,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. But so with ceremonial cacao, every step from the farmer, you know, planting the tree to the people who process it, with the transfer of each hand, they put their intention with it.
Mm.
So they move the cacao with intention every step until it reaches us.
Okay.
And cacao's really, really good. It's very grounding. It has an earthy flavor. And we have that during our, you know, cacao ceremonies for, you know, to just reconnect us with our ancestors, to ground us.
Mm.
Pretty much to ground us and, you know, to find our way back to ourselves.
And it is mildly caffeinated. So from a physiological standpoint, it can be like a vasodilation where it does open up for blood flow.
Mm.
And that's why they would refer to it as something that's heart opening.
Okay.
Yeah. And with our
Like
cacao,
literally.
yeah, it
Yeah.
literally does. And one of the things that we'll talk about is connecting with the smell of it, its essence, you know, where it's come from, and to appreciate the journey that the cacao has been on so that it mirrors a journey that we're going on as well.
Yeah.
You guys embody that in your practice so much. Like, as you're describing how it is grown, made, and processed, I mean, you carry that all the way through to when you guys make it and present it to your groups. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. And all of our cacao, this is like a really exciting point for me because I'm just so proud of where it comes from. But Marissa is from the Philippines. And so all of our cacao comes from the Philippines. And it
Okay.
has a beautiful transfer. Like this last time, we were actually very lucky that her mom just got back from the Philippines and was able to go to a farm where we were just talking about honey before the call, but they raise bees on that
Okay.
farm as well. And so it kind of had a sweet taste to it this last time.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
It was so good.
Good.
Absolutely loved it.
Yay. I can't wait to go back to the Philippines and tell them.
Because it's so cool because it's like a local farmer. So you
Yeah.
know, like you
Mhm.
can watch what they're doing with it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And whenever I go back to the Philippines, because now they know that like I want cacao. I want 95% of my luggage when I come back to the States. I want
Just
So
take the
they're
shirt
always
on your back and
Christina, how's the cacao? Do your people like it? And I'm like, well, let me tell you.
that's good. They're very proud. That's good.
Yeah, they're so happy that like, you know, people not from their village loves their cacao and they love the, you know, and they can bring or I can bring their cacao over to, you know, well, essentially for them foreigners, for people who aren't from the Philippines.
I love the Filipino people. I grew up with two of my best friends were brothers,
Oh,
and their dad was Army and their mom
Mhm.
was from Philippine. And yeah, I love the Filipino people. They're great people.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah. But they're
Really-
very proud people, and
Yeah.
you know,
You know, one of my best friends was Filipino growing up, and his mom would always make me lumpia, and it was just like one of my
love.
ah
That's what
I haven't
Marissa's
had any
mom
good
makes
lumpia
for
in
me.
a long
Ponzi,
time.
yep.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the top bribing tool.
It is. It works too.
It does.
works.
If I want to get on your good side, I'll bring
I would
some
almost kill
lumpia,
somebody for some. Yeah, almost.
right?
Just almost like that close. Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to bring some to your next group?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that means you have to be there.
You can't. For those of you out there who've never had lumpia, and I'd be surprised if you have it because it's
Oh my gosh, it
You know?
is the best.
It's the
Also,
best.
I would give a shout out to my second favorite dish, which is adobo, and that
Mhm.
I would do anything for that.
Yep.
That's like those questions, like if you were to only pick one meal for the rest of your life.
Adobo.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's great.
Like people, I don't know. I didn't grow up in the Midwest. Like, we're all in Colorado now, but I grew up in California, and there was lots of Army brats and lots of Filipino folks,
Yeah.
and we lived good. We lived good. I don't know if the Colorado people got to experience that. Maybe here because they're around Fort Carson, but
Yeah, we have a Filipino community here in the Springs and in Denver. So, yeah, I'm part of the Filipino community. So, like, we have this nice tight-knit group, and we're trying to expand. And, like, we've expanded to the Filipino Chamber of Commerce in Colorado.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a good community here for
we
the
need more
Filipinos.
restaurants.
Also, that's
We
what I
do.
said. But also, a fun fact about Marissa is she is a pageant queen, and she is Miss Phil Am. So
Mrs. Phil M.
Mrs. Phil.
I have the
Impressive.
wig and everything.
But before we move on, the Filipino people that I grew up with, they love everybody. They're very welcoming, very good, kind souls.
Thank you so much.
They are. I've never met a Filipino
Thank you.
person that was mean, or maybe I've just been lucky. I don't know. You can tell me, but
Yeah.
they were
No,
all
I would
No.
agree. I would agree with you, Justin.
Yeah.
So you guys talked about your guys' journey into spirituality and the things you were doing. I mean, you're so well versed in healing and spirituality. Was there any aha moment or just moment of awakening when you got into the practice? Was it a hard time or just a curiosity? Like, what brought you into this scene?
I think I can't speak for us collectively, but I know for me, we had talked about like crystals was a way for me to find my way into this world because crystals, I think at the time felt a little more safe, because that's something tangible. Like I
Yeah.
can look at this,
Mhm.
and I can identify that this is a amethyst or this is a rose quartz. And then I could slowly dip my toes into what properties this crystal could bring for me. And for me, I was desperately seeking healing, emotional healing, as well as physical healing. I had competed for the Scottish heavy athletics. So for those of you who don't know, those are the Highland Games. So it's really heavy weights, caber tossing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I had sustained a pretty severe injury to my back.
Mm.
And I really thought, I'm not going to get through this. And if I do get through this, I'll never quite be the same again. And so it sort of flipped everything on its head for me from being, really focused on strength training and heavy lifting and powering through it and just, being to having to soften into myself and sit with not being able to do those things that later I would find out was a lot of pitta in my system from our master, like the fire dosha. I had a lot of that, and which meant that it sort of burned up everything in its path rather than allowing myself to sit with calmness and to sit with clarity. And it was actually Marissa's presence, just being around me and getting to be her as being in her presence. She just always has this air about her that would kind of be like a balm to my fire. So it would be something, I
That's
would
beautiful.
wanting to seek her company because at the time I didn't really understand why I had so much like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Me wrong, her and I have gone on some crazy fun adventures, but she was always there to sort of be this beacon of calmness for me. Like I remember looking at her and being like, I want to be like that. I want to be so content in myself that I don't need to be constantly doing something new. And so that would be a big awakening for me. And then I think the second one, just making the shift to starting a business with your best friend. I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate or not, but there's something that happens and it's like it's a make or break situation, right?
Yeah.
You have to decide
Definitely.
what's the most important thing here.
Right.
And I think early on in our relationship we were tested in ways that neither one of us expected that would come up.
Yeah.
Both, in our adventure and dealing with the trip that we had, but also just in the startup of a business and operating agreements and all of these different things that were like, but hey, I'm your friend. How do we maintain this friendship while still running a business? And so one of our favorite things that for me was a big turning point is we had a sit down and I think we were at a park somewhere. And I just remember us just kind of like holding hands and things were starting to really pick up for Soluna. And there was stress, I think, on both parts. And we were just like, we just held each other's hands and just looked at each other. And it was like, if it's the business or our friendship, we will always choose our friendship. And that's when
Mhm.
we, sought we always call it, we actually have a relationship coach who helps us to work through things if we don't, so that we can still be best friends in that. And so I think for me, that might have
Mhm.
been a defining awakening moment, in that it's already here. Everything I've ever needed is here within this capsule of our friendship, and everything else is just a cherry on top.
Mm.
So, you know what I mean? Like that for me was a big moment. I can't speak for you, but
Yeah.
for me, that was.
And can you repeat the question for me, please?
Yeah, definitely. When was the aha moment, or the moment that brought you into spirituality and healing, getting involved in this type of world?
Yeah, I think it's two things, like Shannon. She started with crystals and I started with yoga, and like um I've been a dancer, like a hula dancer, so I did like Tahitian, not Maori. I wasn't allowed to do Maori, but like some Samoan and a lot of Hawaiian dance since I was 5. So for like 20 years, I've been a dancer, like through growing pains and stuff like that. I would be performing almost every weekend, and I'd have practice about twice a week for 20 years. And so I have a lot of like my knees hurt. Like I'm old. My body is old. But like my knees hurt when it's cold, and like my hips sometimes pop, and like if I wake up, sometimes when I wake up, I would have a lot of pain in my hips and knees because of all the movement that I did, while growing up and through
Yeah.
them. And so I did yoga for, to start stretching my body and taking care of it. And then the more I went to yoga, I'm like, wait, there's something more than just stretching here. And
Mm.
so I just went in a deep dive of all the different types of yoga. And luckily, like during my yoga journey, Shannon was like, hey, there's this retreat we should go to. It says yoga. And then, like, when we arrived, they're like, welcome to Kundalini Yoga Teacher Training Retreat. I'm like, Shannon, can I just talk to you over here, please? But yeah, and I think, yeah, definitely that retreat, teacher training retreat, was also a second moment, because there were the yoga practices, the asanas or the kriyas that we did were, nothing like I've ever practiced, because before we went on that retreat, I only dabbled a little in Kundalini, but it wasn't anything I've ever experienced. And I'm like, there's something to it. And like with Shannon, like I'm so glad Shannon is here, like was there with me, because there were so many times where like, yeah, this I can't do this, and I'd be too scared, and I would want to run away. And she's like, no, it's okay. Let's do this. This will be fun. Let's just see what this practice is this hour. And then next thing you know, we're there for almost a month, If it wasn't for Shannon, like I would have been like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm sorry. I don't know. And I'd get scared and I'd run away. But like she was there to encourage me and be like, hey, this will be fun. Let's experience this.
There's something beautiful about that dynamic. It's one of the reasons me and Allison work well. I'm that big ball of energy that's like, let's go try everything. And she's like the grounding, logical presence. And sometimes I gotta push her out of the comfort zone, but there's often times she's gotta ground and be like, hey, think about what you're about to do. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right.
Yes. And I love when you have a relationship where you can be like, because sometimes Marissa's got a lot of, air signs on her charts.
Air signs.
She can be a little more floaty sometimes. And in that state, like I can pull her back. But when I'm trying to be like the bulldozer and just like, then she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. First of all, it's 6 a.m. Second of all,
yeah, I can't tell you how many times we're at a retreat or we're doing our own practice, and she's like, Marissa, let me tell you about this A, B, C, D, and E, and I think we can do, G, F, H, I, J, and I'm like, girl, my eyes aren't even open.
Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great.
Or sometimes, like, we get these small, like for our training, like we get these small rooms and I'm still asleep, but then she starts talking while I'm asleep. And I'm like, are you talking to me? She's like, yeah. Like, let me wake up first, please.
Oh my God, that's great.
I love it so much.
And you guys have such a great dynamic. Like, I knew you guys' friendship was very important to you guys, but I never realized just how important it is to you guys. And I think that's one of the reasons you guys not only work so well, but how you guys have been able to create so much with your
thank
friendship.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we joke that, like 24 hours will go by and we haven't seen each other and we're like,
Hello.
"Hi, I'm just at your house now."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So let's get into some Kundalini conversation.
Yeah.
So just kind of bare bones for those who don't know what we're talking about or may have a really bad misconception. What is Kundalini energy as you guys teach and practice, and how does it transform that person's inner world, or does it?
Yeah, I love this question because I think that there's, like we were talking about before, there's just so much, I would say, mystery,
Mm,
confusion, misconception about what one Kundalini energy is, and then how does kind of yoga, Kundalini yoga or Kriya yoga facilitate that. And I think the first thing that I always say with Kundalini yoga is that it's known as the yoga of awareness. So,
mm,
there's tons of different types of yoga. You've got karma yoga, which is a yoga of good deeds. You've got bhakti yoga, which is a yoga of love. You've got all of these different things, vinyasa, hatha. There's so many different ways to have yoga. So first, like yoga itself is to yoke, right? To connect.
mm,
And so when we look at Kundalini, it's the yoga of awareness, but also I really think compassion is the center of Kundalini. And so it's sort of like this basket that holds all of us as we go through the process of growing and evolving. But at its core, it's really known as the innate life force. It's like our soul's electricity. In many traditions, it's often seen as like a coiled serpent or a coil or a kundal, a lock of the divine's hair that sort of lies resting at the base of our spine. And it represents pure potential, pure, raw, untamed, creative energy, that kind of energy that drives us and gives us purpose. And so when it begins to awaken, the idea is to not only prepare the body, but to create space through the central channel where the chakras are, or where we commonly see the chakras at.
mhm.
Whoa, I'm sorry, I just threw my phone across the room.
Tell it how you really feels.
Okay. So I'll go to central chakra. So the central chakra or the central channel where our chakras are, this is where we create space or we remove blockages. And we're sort of activating this deeper awareness. So when we talk about it being the yoga of awareness, it's really this idea of raising our awareness of ourself, the connections in our body. It's raising the awareness with connections with each other to the point where sometimes you feel like you can feel the other person. You can feel their auric field. It's a connection to your community. It's a connection that sort of, like I said, compassion is this basket that we're all living in together. And it's not the important thing. I think the most important thing that we can talk about with Kundalini is that it's not something outside of us. It's not out of reach. It's not something we have to call in. It's already there. And it's the same energy that I guess like sparks creativity, it fuels healing, and it brings us home into our bodies, into power, into divinity.
Oh, that's beautiful. How would you say this relates to the Force, Justin?
I was hoping this question would come up.
We don't view it as a serpent or anything, but everything else about it is, we're talking about life force energy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, it is the
also,
force.
it's not something we don't call in. We understand that it's within us. Whether you want to be interconnected with everything else in the universe, too bad, you already are. You can fight against it all you want to, but that's what connects us. That's what we believe. The force connects us to every living and non-living, just basically every, even down to the last atom in the universe. We're connected through this energy. And of course, it sits innate in people, but it also animates our breath, it animates our sight, it animates our blood, everything. So, but we can learn to channel it like you're talking about and do some pretty amazing things with it,
Yeah.
including healing and, which is I think, the most important one.
Yeah.
We use it to augment our physical bodies so that we can defend and protect and, serve however we need to. So this kind of idea goes, we might as well just call it Kundalini, because it's life force.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of brings me to a question. We also understand the force at two different levels. One would be the life force where, what we're talking about right now, but we also have a cosmic element to that where it's kind of, lack of a better term, the big picture stuff.
Mhm.
Does the philosophy of your yoga talk about that cosmic thing,
Yeah.
or is it just center around like life force?
I love that question, and I love that thinking. And I see exactly what you're talking about with it being the force. Like almost to the point where I'm like, "Hey, should we go ask somebody if they got some inspiration from some Kundalini?"
Oh, for sure. Yeah, probably.
But the most beautiful thing is, like I said, it's within us. But if we look at it at a more cosmic level, the idea is that the lock, right? So the
Hmm.
lock of the divine, it's been cut and coiled in each of us. And so in fact, when we tune in for a Kundalini practice, there's a mantra. We call it the protection chant. And I can provide it to you guys if you want to actually put the full mantra in the show notes. But it's really like the Cliff Notes version of this is that I bow to my inner wisdom.
Mm.
I bow to the primordial unseen wisdom.
Mm.
I bow to the wisdom that is yet known to me, the wisdom that is yet to come, and that is unknown.
Mm.
And I think that that's the part that's the coolest, right? Is that we're sort of surrendering to this idea that, yes, while we have this divinity within us,
Surrender.
there's so much more,
Yeah.
right? So I love that.
We talk
Definitely
about,
get that over to us for the show notes.
Mhm.
we talk about surrender a lot because it's a very important practice in probably any spirituality, I would argue.
Yeah, I would
Even
agree.
even organized religion. If you're not surrendering, you're not really learning or growing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Because we deal with the flow of things.
Mhm.
And the universe doesn't care if I like it or not. I
Yep.
must attune. I must surrender sometimes,
Yeah.
because as much as I think I know, I don't know everything,
Mhm.
or I might be having an attitude that day or whatever, right? I might
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
causing myself to be pushing against that, but it's all about flow. Whereas
Be like water.
be like water.
Be like water. As you were saying that, I was just thinking about like trying to like swim upstream, and it's
Yeah.
like,
That
or one of my favorite things to think about,
that's the
going
analogy
back
I use all the time, because there's always some fool trying to swim uphill.
swim upriver, or think that
Yeah.
they can be stronger than water, or
Right.
you've got this situation where I remember Marissa and I were out in the middle of the Caribbean Sea on this training, and I had this moment where I was just kind of floating on the water.
Mm.
And at first, you're in deep water, and I don't know if you guys know, the water there is so clear.
Mm-hmm.
Almost frighteningly so. If you look down and you're in a deep spot, you're like, "Oh." And I always use this idea because I very clearly remember sort of laying on the water. And I knew Marissa was kind of paddling around, snorkeling nearby me, so I knew I was safe. I knew she would have me if
Right.
anything were to happen. And so that was the first thing, is that I'm safe. And then the second thing was, I remember at first trying to lift my head up when the little waves would come, and then I would end up going back under, and then it would wash over my face, and I'm like, how do I do this? And then finally the surrender came, right? Like it was just like, you're moving with the water. If you just allow the water to come up and trust that it's not going to drown you, I promise it will go back down. And so it was just kind of a cool thing to think about, floating on the water versus fighting in the water.
No, that's beautiful. And I've run into that before, so I'm going to try that next time.
And that's, the water analogy is the best way that we describe the force as a river. It's just a river, and it wears away the things it needs to, and it builds up, and it provides life to the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can try and block it all you want to, and you may block it for a moment, but it's going to push through eventually. Even the largest dams in the world are going to fail someday because the water is too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing too is water is shapeless. It can take on whatever container is presented to it. And I think that's also sort of a beautiful, your little tiny bit of cup of water may stay just a tiny cup of water, but if you give
Right.
it back to the river, who knows what that same amount of water could do.
Yeah.
Or if you heat it up, it goes into the sky, and it goes
Or
somewhere
it's
else.
vapor, it's beautiful. I love water. Water is mwah.
Well, it's so much of who we are. I mean, it's in everything for the most
Like
part.
literally, we're like 70-some% water. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to Kundalini, though, how would you describe the moment when someone first begins to connect with that life force energy?
Ooh, I think this one is the one I think that gives us the most chills because it's so individual. You know, it's called a practice for a reason. It's every person has their own practice. And again, going back to this idea of Kundalini, the mantra Om Namo Gurudev Namo is a way that we would also tune in Kundalini. And it says that I'm bowing to my own wisdom, both the light and the dark that live
Mm.
inside me. And so it's so personal, the experience that you could go through in Kundalini. But the best way that I like to explain this, and we've kind of already touched on this, is there's two things. There's a bunch of different analogies that I like with this one. One, this could be something really similar to like remembering a language that you didn't know you spoke.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just like, oh, I understand that. Or for me, like being with Marissa and her family, the more I'm around her, the more I start to understand Tagalog. And I don't even realize that it's something that's happening. So it's like maybe that happens for you in a way that is just so integrated and natural that you maybe don't even notice the subtle shifts in your day-to-day life. For other people, it's, you know, like falling asleep. So it's, you know, really slowly at first where you're like, come on, when's anything going to happen? I'm ready. My eyes are closed. I'm in bed. And then bam, all at once. And then there's tingles and tears and stillness, but it's not always dramatic. It's almost like there's a recognition, like you're coming home to yourself after being gone for a very long time.
I like that analogy. I
And
feel
then
like
I
that's
know
what a lot of healing is you start to understand yourself more. You start to learn how to give yourself compassion. You begin to see these moments in your path where you are a stranger to yourself because of
Mhm.
trying to conform or trying to please or trying to adapt and survive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
Yeah.
when you start coming home to those youthful enthusiasms you once had, it's magical.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And Marissa always loves to say that going to Soluna is like coming home. And we love that this really jives with the principles of Kundalini as well.
That's a
Yeah.
great catch line too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were first building our studio, we wanted it to be like it pretty much was a brain dump of our ideas of what is
Mhm.
like what we wanted our dream studio to look like.
Yeah, you should see the Pinterest boards.
Yeah. So, yeah, we wanted it to feel, you know, we wanted it to feel like a safe space where anyone can go to and, you know, when they walk in, they feel like they've come home, like they feel like they've gone to their best friend's house or their
Mm.
best friend's living room where they could like say anything, do anything. It doesn't matter how you feel that day, whether you're angry, sad, happy, you know, bored, you're welcome there and you don't feel like there's an expectation of how you should dress or how you should feel in order to be allowed in.
Mm. Yeah. Or how you were raised, or how.
Yeah, how you were
Yeah.
raised, or what your religion is, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
It's such a vast, and it really is like when you walk in the door, it's like I've been here before.
Yeah.
Right.
I know this, you know, I feel good here. And our motto, you know, you talked about like taglines. Our motto for Soluna has always been all vibes welcome. And that comes from this idea that you're going to show up when you're not great. You know,
Yeah.
it's that we're not a
Right.
good vibes only type crew here because we want
Right.
you to walk through the door even when you don't want to be there, but you showed up anyway, so that we can hold you in a space where you could ultimately leave feeling better than you came in.
Yeah.
I've had some of my heaviest, most vulnerable times within the circle.
Or that
But it's
you,
beautiful because that space
or
is
that
there.
you know, we accept you as you are.
Yeah.
Even if you're
Yeah.
being grumpy, you can go
Yeah.
home grumpy too. We still love you.
Yeah, we still
Yeah.
love you, you know. And Marissa used this analogy the other day because she was having a hard time and she was like, just call me Eeyore, you know, just love me, take me along on the ride, but
Yeah.
don't expect too much out of me today.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's cool. We're here
Yeah.
for that too.
That's great.
So, in your experience of teaching and learning and all this about Kundalini, how does your system of yoga help people move from these issues of fear and like resistance and kind of move them into clarity and more alignment?
Yeah. Well, I think we would be remiss if we talked about Kundalini and the study of Kundalini and the study of Kundalini yoga if we didn't also understand that you really can't do that without learning about yourself and learning about, you know, all of your little things. And the idea here is not that we all throw on our white clothing and we put on our head coverings, which is, you know, traditional Kundalini, and then we walk around in perfect balanced harmony all day.
Right.
That's not really how life works. It's not going to be an instant shift. Oh, I had an awakening. That means I'm perfect and
Give me
And
my
I'm all
money.
done.
I'm done. Good. Check it off the list.
Yeah.
It's really about coming to this toolbox of things that we can use. When we're living in this place of fear and resistance, or we're trying to move into a place of more clarity, more alignment, we have to understand that Kundalini is about movement of energy. And what is fear and resistance but just energy frozen in place? So now Kundalini really becomes, if we're looking at it like ice, it becomes the tool to chip that away.
Mm.
Create space. So through breath and movement, intention, mantra, we don't learn to run away from things or to put them up on a high shelf where we don't have to face them. We learn to walk in full heart open with what's uncomfortable. And in doing that, I think it's just more of a realignment,
Right.
not necessarily an alignment, but thinking about how can I shift today? Okay, my left side of my body feels a little, okay, I'm going to put a little more weight on my right side. Or if we look at it in terms of a relationship, Marissa can only give 30% today. No problem, girl. I got you. I got the 70%. Alignment is more, I like to think of it about a balancing act or even a realignment.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about this all the time about bringing, 50-50 is a good goal to have, but it doesn't work that way. And
Yep.
balance isn't a perfect thing. So let me see if I'm trying to find myself in the camera. Balance usually looks like this.
Yeah.
It's never, maybe for a minute if you're lucky, but it's usually like this. And it's just this game that we're just trying to find harmony.
Yeah.
And for us, we're human beings and we have all these other things that go along with that. And being a human is hard sometimes. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the best you could do, or maybe it's this today, or if you have your partner or your friends or whatever, you're down here and they kind of help push you up just a little bit. So
Well, it kind of goes back to that water analogy, right? It's the ebb and flow. It's
mhm.
like when you have good partnerships, you can effortlessly go this way and that, and the water still keeps moving just as strong as it did, even if the current's going slightly to the left at that time.
Yeah. I love that, what you just said, even when you have good partnerships, because remember, when we look at yoga, that's a partnership. That's a partnership between you and spirit. No matter what practice of yoga you choose to do, it's a partnership between your mind, between your body. And you hear us say often that Kundalini is really a dance between breath and body. And that's a beautiful way to look at it, as a partnership. It's so gorgeous. I love that idea.
Oh, wow. So you were talking a bit about how you get into your body when you're doing this practice. Now I'm a big believer in you got to feel it to heal it. You get into those feelings in your body. What are some of the benefits or things that Kundalini allows you to do in emotional healing?
There's so many things. I think if we wanted to get really nerdy about what happens in a Kundalini awakening, really we have to look at there's different forces, right? So we already know that Kundalini itself is the life force, but there's also two other forces at play. So we're really talking about balancing
Yeah.
two fundamental energies, and one is the life-giving, this is the upward moving, this is the breath and inspiration and the expansion, and this is the prana. So you've probably heard this is the prana, the life-giving. But then we have to think of that as, what's the opposite of that? What would be something that is different than that? And then we look at the apana, which is the downward moving energy. But this doesn't mean that it's downward bad. This is the elimination. This is the grounding. This is the letting go. So this is kind of governing what we release and where we release. So this is the physicality, this is the emotionality, and this is the energy that we're feeling. So I always say, we've had so many different analogies today, but you can also think of prana and apana like a positive and negative poles of a battery. When they're harmonized and drawn together, they create that current that activates the dormant energy, the Kundalini, and that's when it begins to rise. And so that's why so many Kundalini practices will focus on core or the navel center, because it's said that the prana and the apana meet here at the Manipura, in the power center. So if I'm giving a class, I'll talk about the pranic pump or the movement here, which is now we've got the downward energy and the upward energy coming to meet. And then it's said that is the fire, right? So Michael, I know you've done the dances with us where we tend to put a lot of emphasis on the fire element.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at. Because the beautiful thing here, to kind of piggyback off of what Justin was saying earlier with water, because the chakra right below that, the sacral chakra, that's water. When those two things come together, creates vapor.
Mm.
Now we're rising. Now we're pushing the energy upward.
Okay.
And so physically, somatically, there's so many things. There's been times where I've personally been in a Kundalini practice where I've had so much apana, where I'm like, my nose is running.
Mm.
My eyes are watering, they're crying. I'm, sweating like a lot, like an unhealthy amount for what I'm doing. So that tells me that physically something needs to move. It needs to be pushed out of the body. And there's been times where I'm more in my, what I would call upper chakras, right? So I'm in like my intuitive space. I'm feeling flighty and airy and flowy. And that's the prana, right? Like that's the creative. That's the, I got to call Marissa at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I think physically there's so, like, again, it's such an individual practice, but there's so many ways that we can feel it. And what Kundalini is really beautiful at doing is there's specific sets of kriyas. So we talked a lot about this, like the physical, the spiritual aspects of Kundalini, but it's also a glandular and neurosystem based yoga. So a lot of the movements are really truly designed to be gland, lymphatic system. We're looking at some, you're going to get some interesting movements. You're going to walk into your first Kundalini class and you're going to be like, okay, so they're staring cross-eyed at their nose with their hands in field goal and they're just doing this weird, they're chanting. It looks very interesting until you understand what's happening behind it. And so we'll work, a lot of Kundalini is actually done mostly, I mean, there's a decent amount of stand-up positions, but mostly when we're doing a kriya, it's going to be in a seated position. But kriyas themselves are like prescriptive, like they have been meticulously made over time for a specific outcome, whether that's detoxification, whether that is a calling of energy, whether that's an ego eradication, whether that's, so there's different things that do that, but it's so beautiful because not only does it adjust our subtle body, our chakras, but we're also looking at physicality of it. We're looking at the glands, which are the protectors of the endocrine system. So we're doing so much physically that's also, as a balance, releasing some stuff emotionally.
Wow. I need to do more Kundalini.
Yeah.
You will be hooked just like we are.
What kind of classes do you guys offer for that?
So right now, because, and I'm sure Kundalini is, and I think we'll probably talk about this, but it's both very notorious and also very unknown. And so someone says, I'm going to take a yoga class, they're expecting, sort of our westernized flow and downward facing dog and it's going to be sun salutations. It's going to be challenging. It's going to give you a great workout. They are not prepared for what we may see in a Kundalini class. And sometimes I think that is based out of fear of what is unknown or not. But going back to your original question, where they can find us, we have classes on every Saturday right now from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Hopefully in the future, we'll have some more digital class offerings. But as you know, Michael, we tend to weave Kundalini into almost everything. Even Marissa has it in her warm up for belly dance. It's, and we are we didn't even talk about this, but we're in the back of a boxing gym. And part of our warm up for the Muay Thai fighters, for the boxers, we pair Kundalini because it is that activation of life force energy. And there's so many parallels between Kundalini and martial arts that it's too good to not do. But it is woven into everything. You'll find it in our ceremonies. You'll find it in our sound baths. You'll find it in our weekly Kundalini classes. Now, the difference is that you may find elements of Kundalini woven into our programs, but every Saturday will follow a specific prescription or kriya that's designed to achieve a specific goal.
Okay, awesome. Is that on your guys' website too?
It is, yes.
Perfect.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I heard you guys were martial artists and badasses, right?
She is.
So how does that, we were talking about water, and there's a book I recommend to you called Be Water. It's Bruce Lee's daughter. I don't know if you guys heard of that, but
I've heard of that.
She kind of compiled all his philosophy. It is awesome. It's one of the best books I've ever listened to.
I just started it today.
Yeah, so it's great.
I'm putting it on my list. Kind
of tying that martial arts stuff in. Does that play a role in your stuff?
Absolutely. Actually, this question is perfect timing because Marissa's actually just made the decision to start doing more.
Nice.
in that realm of things. This is also just a beautiful story. When I found my foray into martial arts, into Muay Thai, she was also lighting up in her belly dance. And so we kind of, for the first time in Soluna, we started to split paths a little bit, and she focused on dancing and I focused on martial arts. And now it's really interesting because here we are a year later coming back together. I'll be performing in her belly dance Hafla this weekend, and she's looking to do a fight in mid next year. So
Nice.
But with that being said, the very existence of Soluna inside such a masculine space is, in and of itself, people are like, wait, you mean we got to walk through the smelly gym just to get to this beautiful oasis? But we love that because it's quite a slap in the face into what balance looks like, and the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And there's so many misconceptions about what is masculine and what is feminine, and should women only be feminine and should men only be masculine, but that in and of itself is a fluid concept, right? There's so many integrations of what the divine feminine and what the divine masculine do for you. For me, I would say that as pivotal points go, I started Muay Thai about 1.5 years ago. Fast forward, Marissa keeps track of my medal count for me. But I'm, 7 fights. A couple of those were exhibitions, but I'm at a 4 wins and 1 loss right now. And not that winning is everything. I actually learned more from the loss than I did from the wins. But I would say that another pivotal point here is understanding that life is a balance. In fact, one of my favorite quotes, it might be Bruce Lee, do not quote me on that. We'd have to probably look it up. But I would rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah. That's an old school samurai. Thing.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would piggyback off of that, and I have no idea where this quote came from, but it is, if you are peaceful and you cannot defend yourself, you're not peaceful, you're harmless.
Yes.
And I don't ever want to feel harmless because of this I am strong and powerful, and it's a physical manifestation of what I know to be true in my spiritual self is now visually available and open in my physical self. And the idea of Muay Thai has such spiritual roots as well. And so combining these two practices together, which is, if you're looking at my Instagram handle, is Shakti and striking. So Shakti is that divine feminine force, and then striking being the double entendre of the Shakti being represented as a snake, and striking being your hands and your feet. So for me, it actually has made me more feminine, more confident, more open to receiving, more adaptable, more
you,
more me.
Yeah.
And it's such a meditative practice that I only thought that I could get this feeling from Kundalini, but I get this same feeling every 3 minutes in the ring. And it's not a coincidence that Kundalini Kriyas typically run for 3 minutes and fight rounds are typically 3 minutes.
Right.
That's incredible. I've been trying to decide to get into martial arts or not. It's something I've wanted to do my whole life and I've never done it. And I think you just officially convinced me.
You should.
Do it. It is the best feeling. And Marissa was just talking about, tell them what you said about confidence to me the other day.
Which one?
I don't know. You were talking about getting into the ring and being confident.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So with the confidence, it's like, I don't know where the magic happens, but like when I'm in the ring, sparring or even just like running pads or something or combos, it transfers into the real world and it helps my confidence. Like I don't have a lot of confidence, but whenever I'm in the ring, it's like, even though it doesn't matter whether I'm getting, beaten up or I'm beating someone up, like, I still have to learn how to dodge my head.
Yeah.
Like somewhere in there, it transfers into the real world where I don't have to, run and hide when I'm having a hard day. I can, or if there's like a problem, I don't have to run and hide. I can face it and say like, yeah, I got this. I can do this. And I think it's all because, I'm training in the ring. I'm doing, Muay Thai. I'm training Muay Thai and learning boxing. So it really does help with confidence.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and just kind of tying it back to Kundalini and what you said too, is we talked about Kundalini not being an option to not look inward if you start this practice. And there's an unmasking that happens when you start to move into a physical practice, whether it's Kundalini or in this case, it was a combination of me pairing the Kundalini with Muay Thai in this space where I had just, kind of got done telling you guys, like in my first awakening, it was very much, I needed to learn to be settle and soft in my body. And now a whole unmasking of where does trauma live in your body? How can you handle this? It sort of introduces you to parts of yourself that you haven't met before, but then you can come back to a practice like Kundalini. And it's like, okay, here's my tools. There is strength and surrender. There is strength and softness. There is this beautiful force that exists with both, knowing how to be peaceful and knowing how to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Would
that's beautiful.
Kundalini be a form of shadow work in its own way?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I think that with shadow work, it can sometimes be scary for people,
Mhm.
who wants to look at that side. Some of us have buried it so deeply, and it kind of becomes this thing that sits in the corner over there, kind of looming, and that you got to face it eventually. It's not today.
Like we don't glance that
Yeah.
way. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, so I think one of the important things to remember about Kundalini is that it's not about a bypassing of the shadow. It really is about opening up and inviting it in. And so when the energy rises, it's like an illumination. It's showing us what's been hidden. And so in the light, there are shadows. The light is going to show us what the shadows are. And so, I think both Marissa and I, whether it's belly dance, whether it's Kundalini, it's not an invitation to fix something when we find a shadow, but an opportunity to create space. So it's something we can hold, we can learn from, and then eventually alchemize.
Yeah, it's something that we talk about quite a bit of shadow work. It's very important. And, find ways to build confidence like Marissa was talking about a minute ago, because it requires a lot of courage to face yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it all at once, but it's also important to find a good guide too through the shadow work. And that could be a therapist, that could be a buddy, that could be a teacher or a master or a whatever, but find a good trusted guide.
I love that, Justin, because it just really reminded me of Star Wars. Because obviously the more powerful characters in that saga are going to be your characters like Yoda or Obi-Wan, but they're not the main character. And I think that as a main character in all of our own stories, it's so important for us to have people in our lives to be our Obi-Wans and to be and even to be our Leias, the people that are willing to call us on our stuff and really show us what we're doing that's wrong. And so I think that I just got this very clear vision of that when you were saying that. And I'm like, yep, it's important.
Something else we explored too. We did a show on this a while back where it was this dance between ego and spirit. You have to find balance in so many different ways. This is why it's hard. That's why it's important to have a guide. Finding that middle ground with spirit and ego so that you can start to heal and you can start to find that good place. Even when bad stuff is happening, you find that good place.
Yeah. Again, I think it's about that good place. Where is home to you? Is home in your body? Is home with a person? Is home something that you look outward for? Or is it something that you're completely and totally comfortable going inward and not just like going back to the shadow work, not just coexisting with them, but actually living and thriving with those parts of ourselves that we're not so crazy about.
Right.
So when people are doing Kundalini and they have like intense spiritual experiences, what do you do to help ground them while they're going through those type of awakenings while they're practicing it?
It can be really intense. And again, such an individual experience. And as a guide, my job isn't to really tell them, hey, good job, you're going to make it through this. Or hey, just keep pushing. Hey, just keep doing this. My job is to find ways to help them feel safe in what they're experiencing. And so I think the first thing is that Marissa and I both are huge. I mean, breath is everything, right? So breath is the anchor that brings us back. And so first I would say breath always. Are you breathing? Are you breathing through your nose? Are you breathing through your mouth? What kind of breath are we bringing in? And then secondly, I think is body. So remember, you'll hear me say this so many times, I'll start to sound like a broken record player, but it's that Kundalini is a dance.
Don't worry, we do that a lot. We talk about it. Yeah, it's okay.
It really is
They're
a dance.
used to it.
They're like, we got this.
They're used to it.
But Kundalini is this idea of breath and body, and breath and body working together. And so I think sometimes when we're experiencing something challenging, when we're experiencing something difficult, we tend to lean towards a pain mindset. So for example, if we're doing a particularly long Kriya and it's, 3 to 7 minutes of the same repetitive movement, eventually your brain is going to start to say, you're in pain, you should stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have this very challenging moment that is a mental game just as much as it is physical, but it's telling us you can't do this because you're in pain. When the reality is you're probably not in pain. You're just a little uncomfortable. And then, so that's sometimes the response that people have, right? Is this idea that I can't do this, I'm done, I'm locking in, I'm done, I'm stopped. And then that can sometimes trigger an awakening or an intense spiritual feeling because it's the shame or it's the guilt that needs to bubble to the surface that comes out. And so I would say that you came here to try something, to step outside of your comfort zone. So you can do hard things. You'll hear me say that all the time. You can do hard things. Remind them that they're in a safe place. Well, remind them that they can do hard things, that they have breath and they are in their body. And then sort of, I think the second response that we get is people tend to want to be our air signs over here. Yeah. And they want to tend to block things out. And they start to get real floaty. And, you almost could see their little auras just spinning and floating. And they're like, I don't want to be here. What did I sign up for? Mm-hmm. And I always just like to remind them that you came here to be in this body, not float above it. So let's drop in. And so when we say that in this world, drop in, like, what does that mean? It means get out of here. Mm-hmm. Stop thinking you can't do it. Stop thinking it's too hard. Stop thinking these things. I don't obviously say that to them, but the intent is your mind is so much stronger, but you have to let go and feel, because if you convince yourself, I guess it's a kind of a double-edged sword or a double-edged lightsaber, if you will, to this idea of, I guess, what people would determine grit, right? Like, what is grit? Like, it's pushing through things even when we know it's hard. That's very much a mental game. But then we roll in something like a somatic practice where, yes, it's a mental game, but now we're going to say, I'm going to close off this part of my inner voice for right now. And I'm going to allow my body, who is the best teacher, to take me where it needs to go. Yeah. And to be given a space where that's okay to do.
Well, and one thing I just got to bring up, like, we talk about breath a lot on here. And Justin, when I first went into training under him, which was 2 years ago, breath work was a huge part of my training. And I've always known, as I've gone through this healing practice, how important breath work is to regulate your nervous system and get you through crap. There was no greater lesson I had to realize the power of that than when I had to do an ice bath in your guys' group. And you kept telling us you can do hard things, and it was crazy going from like getting in there and being like, what the hell am I doing? Shivering, like my mind's going crazy, my body's freaking out, and you're just like, breathe. I started doing the box breathing. It was crazy how within 30 seconds getting in that ice water, I was calm and there was peace. And it was the first time I truly felt that.
Your whole body shift, because initially you can see the resistance, right? You're swimming up river, you're going upstream at that point. And your hands are in their little T-Rex stance and we're just like all cramped up, and then that surrender comes. And breath is what brings us back to that every time, because breath, above all else, reminds us that we have a body and that we are safe. And as long as we're breathing, we're safe.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful tool. And again, you can do hard things. Like, you echo in my head so often when I'm doing something difficult. Like, you can do this, man.
We're all about alchemy over here, aren't we, Michael?
Yeah.
What do we transform pain into?
Purpose.
That's beautiful.
We do.
That is beautiful. So?
Basically, at the center of all we do is the force, which is also chi, prana. So, you don't see a lot of Yodas and lightsabers and stuff like that. So
I think it's so cool because somewhere down the line, like fantasy, I mean, what is a story except something to quantify what we're feeling or what we're experiencing, And I think that for so many of us, I think you'll really find a lot of parallels between people who are spiritual and people who are nerdy into those, whether that is Star Wars or Harry Potter or magicality about it, because there's so many of us that before we were ready to face what was inside us, we gravitated towards other things,
Right.
gave us that level of spirituality. And I will stand on that hill
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
I can't anymore.
I
Oh, it's
mean,
so true though. Anime, my God, that's what it was for me. That was my
Yeah.
place for like values and philosophy. It's
mhm,
like I want
Yeah.
to be like you.
Well, and I
and
think that somewhere down the line, somebody realized humans crave this connection,
mhm,
this again quantifiable, this way to explain the unexplainable. We crave it. I mean, it's old as time. You've got fables, you've got,
mhm,
the Greeks and the Romans and their gods and their deities, and then you've got, Norse mythology and all of these things. What is it if not a story that's meant to help us understand something at a deeper level?
yeah,
And that's why I will never, my son loves anime and I'm like, get on with it, man. Learn
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Because, some of my best lessons, especially when it comes to chakras, came from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm like,
Mhm.
right there. That's,
Yo,
you know.
yo.
I like from 8 or 9 years old, I studied all theology, I studied all philosophy, I studied
Like,
numerous magical systems, and what was ironic was I never could fit them together. Couldn't figure out. And in my teens, I met a guy named Derek Thompson who was my master, and he's just a regular guy from Boston. You would never ever know by looking at him or hearing him but he developed this. He's the beginnings of a philosophy that he calls the Ashla philosophy, and at the center of that, of course, is the Force. Now he's very much more scientific minded. I'm like the old wizard. He's like the dude in the lab coat. You know what I mean? Like so. But I brought all that with me, and the ideal of the Force was the glue, because every religion, every philosophy, every magical system, every energetic practice all has that thing at the center of it. We just all call it different things. So, you can look back as far as time and find the Force. You can look back as far as every thousand deities were all about moving energy and about life and death and these cycles.
yeah, I love that. Marissa always tells this story. Can you share? Because she has had a background in theology as well.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting, and it's my favorite story, and I always butcher it. So
Okay, yeah. So it's the story about I think it's the five blind men who there's someone who owns an elephant and he got five blind men and said, "Hey, I want you to describe to me what this elephant looks like." And like mind you, these the blind men, they've never seen an elephant before. And so the first blind man goes up and touches the trunk of the elephant and says, "An elephant is this long tube that
Hmm.
hangs from the air. And that's what an elephant is." And then the second blind man comes in and he touches the ear of the elephant. And he said, "No, no, you're wrong. An elephant is actually thin like a piece of paper that blows in the wind. That's what an elephant is." And so the third blind man, he goes up and touches, feels around the foot of the elephant and says, "No, you guys are wrong. It's not a rope. It's not not a piece of paper that blows in the wind. It's actually like a very sturdy, you know, it's very sturdy and it's rooted into the ground and it's large. You can barely put your hands around it. That's what an elephant is." And then the fourth blind man goes up to the elephant and feels the stomach and says, "No, I think you guys are wrong. An elephant is this large, round, this large, round ball that's suspended in the air. That's an elephant. I don't know what you guys are, what you guys are touching, but you guys are wrong. This is what an elephant is." And finally, the fifth blind man goes up to the elephant and touches the tail, and he feels the tail and he's like, "No, you guys are wrong. I'm right. An elephant is actually this thin string that has like hair at the end. That's what an elephant is." And so they start arguing with each other and arguing, "No, you're wrong.
Hmm.
I'm right. You're wrong. I'm right." But they all have different experiences. And so the man who owned the elephant was like, "No, all of you guys are wrong, but also all of you guys are right. When you bring all of those together, then you are describing what an elephant is. An elephant cannot be one without the rest of the
Hmm.
description." And that's like what religion is, and what, you know, all the religions of the world is, all magicality, like everything. You can't say, oh no, Hinduism is wrong, only Christianity is right, or Jainism, or just any different religion. Like, Norse mythology is wrong, Wiccan is wrong. Like, no, you have to have all of those different aspects of their religion and like spirituality all coming together, and like that is what religion or belief is.
Yeah. And that's what that's beautifully said. And that's what we do. So we start from the inside and we get the person right. We get them right with themselves. We help them through the shadow work. We help them understand their purpose and their place. Even if it's a small purpose, it's a purpose is a purpose. And then from there, we grow to that cosmic understanding where we now look at the entirety, the totality of everything and say, yes, all roads lead to source. And we just have different languages, and we just have different eyes, and we have different ears, and we hear and see everything differently. And that's kind of the point of our philosophy, is that it does not about being right or wrong. We don't care. It's about balancing. It's about following the will of the universe, which is balance. The universe does not care about any of these things. It only wants you to be in harmony with it. The universe wants you to be in harmony with the sky, with the water, with the earth, with all this stuff, right? So because we come from the earth, but we also come from space.
Yeah.
Every single one of us is both space dust and, you know, the soil of the earth. And we have the water of the earth in us. And all these things came together. That's how our planets were formed, by just taking all of these things from the entirety of the universe. So that's kind of what we really do. And again, at the center of that is the force. Now, you know, we don't tell people what created us or how we were created. We let them decide. We let them deal with that on their own, because, you know, we don't snatch kids up from 2 years old and take them back to the temple and wash them into being these magical warriors. No, most people come to us as adults who are dealing with years of trauma or years of all this stuff, and, you know, we have to meet them where they're at. Yeah, it's not about being right or wrong. As long as people have the willingness to be better than they were, and you know, they're competing against themselves.
Yeah.
Be better every day. Be better every day.
Yeah.
You know, we
1%.
we teach virtues, but we call them agreements, because every morning you have to get up and you have to wake up and you got to agree to do it every day and every day. It's like what you were talking about earlier about pushing through.
Yeah.
You have to do it. You have to agree to it. And some days are better than others, you know.
Well, and you know, when we become contractually obligated to the agreements that we make with ourselves.
Yes.
If that's an agreement that we wake up, it could be something so small as I'm tired.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. That's your contract for the day.
Right.
And, you know, in Kundalini, these sort of karmic, in yoga, I guess in general, there's these karmic patterns. They're called samskaras. And so it's this idea that we're destined to repeat the same karmic pattern until we've learned.
Right.
You know, and it's sort of like the grooves on a record player. Like, you know, it's just constantly getting deeper and deeper with each play, but you can shift it with one tiny movement. One small agreement can change the whole pattern of the record.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing that you guys are doing. And not only that, but I think you're giving a really relatable way. As we talked about before, so many people feel, even though it's a spiritual community, even though it's a love and light and all things nice, where is there space for me? The broken, the hurt, the sad, you know? And I think that you're giving something that is so relatable and honest. That it's beautiful. And I think it's Kundalini just flows with it.
Yeah.
They're very closely related, because again, you know, we use different languages, we use different words, we hear different things, and that's okay. As long as we remember that we are more alike than we are different, and as long as we remember that whether you like it or not, you are interconnected. I am interconnected with you and him and my dog and the walls around me and every atom in the universe.
Yeah.
And you can fight against that, but you'll keep coming back again and again and again until you learn it.
Record player.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the the teacher student, master apprentice, whatever relationship is, he is my son, because if he's not my son, then I won't protect him. I won't look after him. He has to be, this relationship has to be more than student teacher.
Yeah.
I have to provide that space for him where he can play,
Yeah.
where he can, and I know.
It's family.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So.
Well, and it's a space that you're holding for him to, and I think that so many people get confused, and even with, coaches and athletes, it's the same. A good coach is not just your coach.
Right.
A good coach is holding space for you to make mistakes, to play, to learn, to grow, to, try your own skills, to, make mistakes. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I knew he was going to, I met him many years before he was actually decided to step into training. And I always knew he would be the perfect student. He just didn't know that yet. And it took him some time. And we just did we recorded a show yesterday about grief. And, that was the thing that really propelled him finally to just say, okay, it's time to do something new.
Let go of those rigid beliefs.
And I'm really proud of him. I embarrass him all the time. Watch, his cheeks are going to get red. I embarrass him.
They're always red. I see how it is.
No, he's a really good man, and he's gone through a lot, and he's done so well, and he's branching out so good too. He's picking up all this stuff, and that's really the way. That's the way for us.
That's the way.
That's the way. So
am I mistaken, but what is it? Is it truth is the way? Or do they never say that? Or they just say it's the way?
From the Mandalorian?
Yeah.
They just say this is the way, or
my bad.
Yeah.
I, for some reason, had it stuck in my head that this is the way, and I got super excited because my husband was watching Mandalorian the other day, and I kind of was like, I was working on my belly dance costume, but I was like listening in the background, and I thought he said truth is the way, and I got so excited because one of the big mantras in Kundalini is Satnam, which is I am truth.
Yes.
So anyway, my bad.
Yeah. For us, light is also truth. Light could be, it plays many roles. And when we say light, sometimes we talk about the force. Sometimes we talk about truth. And for us, it's about truth. We're not interested in anything other than truth. And that's why we don't say light and dark a lot. Sometimes we do, but it's more to kind of make the point that light is truth, dark is untruth. But really, there's no good or bad. Light's not, truth is central. Truth is what must be pursued.
Yeah.
Truth has no regard for popularity.
Truth has no regard
for popularity. That is actually the fundamental belief, in one of the most fundamental beliefs in Kundalini, especially when we look at the word guru itself. So Guru is light and dark, and an honoring of both.
Right. The truth, because that is the truth. The truth. That's the most basic truth of the universe. Yeah. Yeah,
it's the truth. And then knowing, when we start talking about chakras and different things like that, we've got attributes that we might give. And one of the biggest ones in this sort of vapor space that we talked about, like the heart chakra, right? After we've supercharged everything and we've connected it, now we're in vapor. And here lies discernment, right? Here is what is perception? What is reality?
Right.
Are we having a storytelling moment here, or are we actually seeing truth? And truth isn't bad or good, or like you said, it just is.
It
just you can't change it. You can't put a pretty coat of paint on it and make it something other than it is. But what you do have is discernment.
Yes.
You have the ability to say, how am I going to let this truth impact me? But that's
one of the things we like to say on here. The greatest lie we ever tell is the lie we tell ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
It is. So how do you guys guide your students when they go through this Kundalini awakening? And it doesn't matter really if it's super startling or very tranquil. How do you guys, because once they come out of that, then there's like questions, right? They're like, oh my God, what just happened? Especially if it scares them. Or if they're usually like somebody who's like always like, oh my God. And then they find this really moment of peace and like everything stops. And like you were saying before, you learn to kind of chill out in those moments.
Yeah.
How do you help them make sense of what just happened, especially if it's like their first time?
If it's their first time, this is typically the moment where they have to face their truth as well. Like, is this something I'm really ready to get into? Because there's not really a turning back here. And as we mentioned before, I think with a good guide, a gradual step in that moment. And again, that may happen when we're not even around. They may happen while they're dancing, cooking dinner in the kitchen.
Right.
It might not always happen with us because those profound moments are so unique to each person. But I would say, like, in this space of like navigation and helping them, safety is first, right? Is just knowing like there are people around you who will hold you and support you and protect you no matter what comes up. And you'll hear us say it a lot, whatever arises, just let it happen. Um, and so in this space, we would again remind them that they're safe in their body. We have a lot of times done like a grounding method with some people if it's, and this could be a great grounding method that you guys have heard of the 5 4 3 2 1. Have you heard of that? I can send, yeah, and it's just like find things that you can see, find things that you can smell,
Yep.
things that you can. But another really great, beautiful practice in Kundalini is that it typically a Kriya will follow a rise and a fall. So there's typically a warm up and a climax, a recovery, and then finally an integration. And so one of the most beautiful things about Kundalini is we do use a lot of mantra. And mantra itself can be translated into mind train or train. It's a way to anchor, to bring back, to center someone who is, for a lack of a better term, going through it. And I think it's really important we don't like to use the words meltdown or breakdown or crash or anything like that. Everything is a breakthrough or a returning, everything, no matter how big. And because like I said, these moments may happen to you in a Kriya, but it also may happen to you when you're driving down the road and you saw a cute dog, like it's gonna happen.
Right.
And so I think reminding yourself that you are safe in your body, right? Like that you're safe, you have breath, you have control. And then the next step to that is journaling. Is now information.
Michael.
What do I do with it? How can I process it? Because there is no better machine for processing than a pen and a paper. And you might feel weird about it.
You guys hear that? Listen, I say it all the time. You heard it right here.
He has a journaling prompt every episode.
Journal.
Yes. Journal. We are so fond of journaling prompts. We, a big exercise that we'll do too is if you can't think of something to journal, then write a letter. Write a letter to yourself in this experience. Write a letter to your past self. But, it might feel a little weird. Like my biggest tip for journaling would be, we actually keep journals in Soluna and so many pins that I have miraculously not been managed to lose all of yet. Yeah. But because journaling is such a fundamental point of integration, no matter what happens, you need a record. You need a way to get thoughts on paper so that they're not jumbling up your head. But also you need a manuscript of what you've been through. And this is a beautiful tool to go back and look. This actually happened to me just recently where I used to journal all the time. And somehow I had left a journal at the gym open. And it was in the sauna, and my coach kind of thought it was like a sketch pad or something like that. And he had come across something that I had written at the top, and he just had it circled. And he was like, and he took a picture of it. He's like, this is what I needed to see today. So you don't know what your words, how they will impact yourself, someone else. And so it's nice to have. So journaling is, I think, the best integration tool.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's so true though.
It's so
when people start,
it's so hard to get people to journal sometimes though.
It really is, because I think they feel silly or they feel,
they're like, I don't need a diary, dude. It's not a diary. It's a journal.
It's literally anything you want. And you may have like what I have found to be in our experience too is there's initially resistance to it. And then you'll look over, 3 or 4 minutes later and it's like,
yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
And that happens to me all the time where my handwriting will quite literally change personality because I'm so invested in what it is that I'm writing. It's maybe just for my eyes, but maybe for not. Maybe my story will help someone else later on down the line.
And that's really the thing too. I tell him, and Michael knows this. Michael's heard this. He's lived this. Listen, if you need 2 journals, one for me to read and one only for you, then do that. There are no right or wrong things to write in a journal. And if you never want me to read any of it, that's fine too. I just need you to understand what you're going through. And I need you to understand so that you can look back and say, wow, because as his teacher, I can see him progressing in ways that he cannot see. So the journal helps with that too.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal. It's not like you don't have to write secret stuff in there, or you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's one of the best meditation tools. People don't ever.
It's a gorgeous meditation tool.
Yeah.
Actually, Marissa is the one that really, before we were even really started our journey, I'll never forget. She used to have this cute little, it was almost like a date book. You remember that one where you would literally just note, it wasn't anything crazy. It was just, I went to Shannon's today. We had coffee.
Mhm.
I went to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Maybe that was just all it was for that journal
Right.
entry. And I was like, why would she be doing that? And then it's just such a cool thing to have, to look at progress, because that might be how you start, where you just pick the most mundane thing to write about and then more happens,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's I don't know how we feel about Harry Potter in the current climate, but I'll never forget there's a Horcrux that one of the characters, Ginny Weasley, starts to write in her journal. And this is not a cautionary tale by any means, not to journal, so please don't think that. One of the things that happens is she ends up it starts off just simple enough, like I've got a crush on this boy and nobody understands me. And it really turns into she's sharing a piece of her soul.
Mm-hmm.
with this book. And I think that that's such a beautiful metaphor for what can happen. Obviously later on it becomes an issue and she gets possessed by the spirit living in the book. We're not talking about that, but we are talking about this idea that these pages hold a part of you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, true.
It's so true, though. Yeah, when I first started my training with Justin, he has these things called axioms that I had to go through. And every day he would give me a new axiom that I'd have to chew on, sit with, think about, and then I'd have to journal about it that day. Sometimes it might take a couple days depending on how much I need to chew on it, but it was always a great reflective experience. And it's crazy with that being at the start of my journey and now where I'm at now when I go back through those entries. And it's just like, it's crazy seeing the shift in perspective and even understanding of the lessons I learned at that time.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I love that.
So when people are going through Kundalini and they have these first experiences, how do you help ground them in their authenticity and their...
Yeah. I think one of the things that you'll often hear us say at the beginning of a class, and this could go for any class, this could be for belly dance, this could be for Kundalini, this could be for a sound bath. When we have a expectation of what we think should happen, right away we take a step further away from authenticity, because that expectation starts to take over what you think should happen in the class. Whether that's an experience that you should have or a skill that you think you need. And then we start to wrap ourselves in lots of different things. And maybe that's, I can't do this activity, and therefore shame comes up or guilt comes up, or it's, I should be feeling something, so I'm going to convince myself that me having to go to the bathroom is actually my Kundalini, and I'm just going to,
Yeah.
bring up these things. And so I think grounding someone in authenticity starts with asking them to participate and not anticipate. And so allowing you to be authentic also means allowing you to witness what you're experiencing and then ultimately discern what you should do with that. And I think
Okay.
does that make sense? I don't know if that directly answered your question, but I think that it gives us a nice base for what authentic practices look like.
Okay. No, I think that answers the question great.
So let's talk about some misconceptions around Kundalini, because there are a lot, and there's a lot of people who don't know much about it who are experts at it, right? So
Yep.
not like the actual experts or teachers, but just everyone else.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many different things. I think yoga in general in the West, there's been several prominent members in the yoga world who have been suggested or even implicated in certain things that have made us go, oh, wow, that's not what we wanted to have happen, including who we, I think, would attribute to Kundalini, which is Yogi Bhajan. And so if we don't even look at the spiritual aspect of things and we just start looking at sort of, I guess, the political climate of Kundalini.
Mm-hmm.
And then just recently it's Guru Singh, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, who, well, don't quote me on that one. I need to double check that. What is it, Singh? Anyway,
Is
it doesn't matter.
I'm like,
There's in the political climate of Kundalini yoga, it can get challenging. And notoriously, it hasn't been a very accessible yoga. So what I mean by that is only people who have the means, the ability to pay X amount to take on this yoga, because for a very long time, Yogi Bhajan owned a lot of rights to this specific yoga. And so you'll still find today several teachings or kriyas that are as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And so you'll have to navigate that in terms of what you believe happened, what you didn't believe happened, and then the accessibility and the diversity of what it was originally when it came to the West. So far and above beyond that, the next thing is that it falls in the tantric line of yoga. So when people hear the word tantra, tantric, most people who are a little confused or don't understand this way of thinking, they'll immediately jump to something sexual or intense or something like that. And so then it tends to get a very interesting overlay to it. And, yes, it's in the Tantra line, but I always tell people when we talk about Tantra, sex is just one leaf on this grand tree of thinking. But with Kundalini itself, you also have misconceptions around it was a cult. You walk into your first Kundalini class and they've all got turbans on and they're wearing white and they're crossing their eyes and they're holding up their fingers and they're, chanting. For a lot of people, it feels very far outside of what their comfort zone is. And so when we come to it at its basic, most simplest core, it's just breath. It's just breath and movement and vibration. And it's any tool that we can use that helps us remember ourselves. And when it's practiced with integrity, when it's practiced with compassion, it can be incredibly healing and very empowering.
Beautifully said. A lot of what you guys are talking about really ties into the work we do. We talk about alchemy a bunch, and you were talking about how you get into these states where you feel these lower energies, these higher energies. What kind of alchemizing happens within Kundalini in transmuting emotions into more?
Yeah. I mean, I always say that one thing that we look at with Kundalini is we change, pain into power. I love that you guys said pain into purpose, because again, Kundalini is the creative energy, the purpose-driven energy. And so it's really, to me, taking everything that we've experienced, the good, the bad, the ugly, the grief, the fear, the longing, and it's becoming in the Manipura, in the sacral, we didn't talk about the root. The root is the wood, right? So it begins there, the stability. And from there we have, we add the water. I'm not sure how that kind of ties into it, but that becomes the fire. And so it could be the fluid. You've also heard people talk about the sacral chakra as being the fuel. So we've got the wood, the fuel, the fire, the vapor. And so it's really fuel for our transformation. And it's the fire in which we're refined, in which we're forged. It doesn't erase our wounds, but it rather turns them into wisdom.
Yeah, beautifully said.
I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. Before we go today, I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and each of you can answer in whatever order you want. If you had one teaching or one truth or one principle to leave with every soul who is watching this video or listening to the audio, what would it be?
Do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I feel like my answer would be shorter.
That's okay.
I talk less than her, if you guys can't tell.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I love it. Because you can explain it so well, and I'm like...
Balance, right?
Yes,
Yeah. I think leaving, one thing I would say is, you're your own teacher, and just to trust yourself, because your body knows what's best for yourself. And I know even with myself, there's a lot of people, especially me, who I don't trust my body. I didn't trust my body. I'm like, no, I absolutely cannot do that. But then you really have to stop and really think about it. Wait, let's go back. Let's trust my body. What is my body telling me? I can actually do that one thing that I was so scared to do.
Yeah.
So definitely, I would say trust your body, because if something doesn't feel right, trust your body and get away from the situation. Or if something you're not sure if it's going to go right, trust your body and what it's telling you. Where is it telling you? Is it telling you in your heart, your stomach, your knees, your ears, your head? And listen to your body.
Yeah. That's beautifully put, friend. And I love it. And it's such a somatic experience. And I think maybe to piggyback off of that, so many of us find ourselves searching for a treatment, searching for a a new experience, searching for a new crystal for me, whatever it is that we're searching for, but to come back home and to say, hey, I'm already whole. There's nothing outside of me that's going to make me more complete. And it's not about becoming someone else.
That's right.
It's about remembering, and you, just you, exactly as you are at this moment, not the improved you, not the you once you've been healed, but you right now are worthy of your own light.
That was beautiful.
That
I
was.
love it.
We love you.
It was, though.
So before we go, can you share with everybody how they can get in touch with you? I know most of your stuff is in person, but for those who don't live here,
Yeah.
what's the best way to get in touch with you, find all your work and stuff?
Absolutely. So the easiest, best way to get a hold of us is on our website. It's solunaco.com. That's going to have events, classes, blog posts. We'll be launching some virtual offerings later this year that also has information on retreats and things like that that'll be launching in 2026. I would say above that, follow us on social media, because we do some silly stuff on TikTok, but we've got some great stuff on Instagram and Facebook. It's all different. We try to give you guys a different vibe. We're big fans of showing up to people in a way that they can receive. That's, find what you can. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We love our community, and you guys are always, as always, all vibes welcome.
And of course, we'll put
Links will be in the show notes.
the links and stuff there. You guys will
We
probably
also
get a
have a
bunch of
Facebook
follows
group,
here soon.
too.
Oh, yeah, we
I
do
need to
have
go
a
in and follow you myself.
Yay!
You guys have a what?
We do. We just had a private Facebook group that we started. So it's just Soluna Mind and Body community. If you guys want to request it, we'll just ask you a couple of questions and you can jump in there. Those are for discussions, affirmations, journal prompts, things like that you guys can go in and totally free.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. You guys made my night.
you.
This was a great conversation.
Thank you guys
Yes,
so
it
much.
was.
We had a
Thank you.
Yeah,
blast.
you guys will have to come on again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime.
We would love
Anytime.
to.
Open invitation. Anytime.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as we did. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.